Hey, this is YC, and this episode is called Why APIs Are Going to Feed My Children. Okay, so APIs. I'm not the biggest expert on APIs as far as, using them a lot. I've recently started to use them, but I couldn't use them without the help of my friend who made this robot that is now kind of like an employee that works for free of ours. Like we have this business, and it's marketing, it's blogging, it's all that stuff that I've mentioned before that I do, and it's at a certain point there became a need to employ this robot to interact with some APIs. And not too long ago, maybe 8 months ago, 9 months ago, I didn't really think about APIs too much because I'm not a developer, so I don't make apps, so I don't need access to APIs, generally speaking, in my type of work because, I don't make apps. So therefore, my understanding of APIs at the time was that I guess you need APIs to make apps for different platforms and stuff like that. It's like my understanding of APIs is it's a bunch of libraries that are provided by certain platforms. Like for instance, Google offers APIs, a lot of APIs, and Amazon offers an API, and WordPress offers an API, and lots of different websites offer APIs. Sometimes they charge you to use their API, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have to apply to use it because, they think you're making an app. And so therefore they want to screen the people that are going to use their API because it's like using their library of essentially like kind of plugging into the platform and using some of their data to perform certain tasks. So I didn't really have a very good understanding of that a year ago. Like I knew I had heard the word API or the term, but I wasn't, using it in any way. But then, me and my buddy were like, it would be nice to do this specific thing, and we wanted to go into WordPress and change a bunch of shit, like just automatically have a script or like a robot, essentially, like call it a bot, but it's like a script, right? A program go into. He thought he could, he was getting pissed off because neither of us wanted to do this one really tedious task that involved going into WordPress and changing like a bunch of things all at once. Basically, we were editing some articles, and the editing that needed to be done was super tedious, and we were thinking couldn't like a robot do this? Like, couldn't this be automated? And so he had a passing fancy in Python, and I didn't, but he did. And he was, I think it was like Christmas holidays or something, or summer holidays last year, maybe. He was tooling around with Python, and he came up with something that allowed us to interface with WordPress, send the robot in, and clean up these articles. And it was basically formatting we were doing because we didn't want to do all this formatting ourselves. So he devised a robot to do it. And I was like, neat. That's cool. So does this thing actually work? So we tried it. It kind of worked. It kind of didn't because of the fact that WordPress is like a clusterfuck of a bunch of fucked code, and the theme and the plugins and everything in there was just like totally messing with the bot's ability to do some kind of standard task. And so we were kind of like, yeah, this half worked, I guess. And then time went by, and the need came to do some other task that was another tedious task. And it occurred to us that Amazon has an API. So we're like, I wonder if we could get our bot to go into Amazon and access the database and basically make us these tables that we were like having to kind of like make ourselves with CSS. And so we're like, could we like get these tables made for us using like a robot to kind of like plug in the script and then have the robot go to Amazon and get the product and basically do all that good stuff. And then we were wondering that. And then it turns out that once we started messing with it, we got into the Amazon API, like into the database, and then realized that, there's some weird bugs in there. Like you get this library of, like, my understanding, you get a library of tools and things and like, script stuff where, Amazon offers it has its own kind of API library stuff. So if you want to do certain things, you have to access certain parts of the library, to perform certain tasks. Like, for instance, access inventory, check if inventory is in stock, check out the popularity of the inventory, check out, like, I don't know, just get various information about the inventory. So that was sort of like interesting, but I guess because of the fact that Amazon, like, I'm not sure how many pros there are, like people that are like super pro at, using the Amazon API, or even why you'd want to use it, really. I guess it's like, are you going to make some kind of, I guess some people like that make plugins and apps have a need for that API, but we were just trying to get product information and like product pictures, for instance. So like, if the seller was, uploaded a weird picture as the product image, then you'd be stuck with some weird image that some seller uploaded because that's the only image associated with that product. Or there'd be multiple products, the same product, but multiple ASINs for the same product, because, the seller would make a page, there'd be an ASIN, they'd take the page down, or they'd like make another page, just like a duplicate page with a different image or like some different information. And so then there'd be like 3 or 4 pages of the same product. And my mind is starting to like, melt down as I'm thinking about this right now. But essentially, we were able to go into the Amazon API and pull data and build tables, which previously we were kind of having to do ourselves. And it took a while, but we got the tables to look like half decent, responsive, and not glitchy at all. They were basically fine. And so now if I want to make a table, I can just basically get our robot to like, launch the script in Python, and then, kind of get the table made without actually having to like, get images, or like myself, or manually look up the product. It's more just like the robot can find the product faster than I can. It can like get the information on the product faster than I can, and build a table way faster than, like I can. Even though there's table building plugins, a lot of them don't have responsive capabilities, or they're kind of like a pain in the ass to use, especially if you're trying to populate it with, Amazon information because Amazon's so finicky about like what how you portray them with certain information. You can't put certain product information because it changes and that kind of thing. Anyway, I could feel my brain literally shutting down, but where was I going with this? Yeah, essentially, beyond that though, beyond the Amazon stuff and the WordPress stuff, we started seeing all the different like platforms and programs that had like API access, like Ahrefs has API access that you have to pay for, and it's not cheap. So if you want that data, then you have to pay a pretty penny for access to their data, which kind of makes sense, because I think with tools like Ahrefs, it's it's in your hands to see if like if you can use it effectively. Like that data, to some people wouldn't really, they would just be confused by it. But if people that know how to use Ahrefs know that the data is valuable, but you have to know how to use it or what to do with it. But then if you had an API that gave you access to their kind of database or whatever, and you could actually manipulate the data in some way that goes beyond like what you can do manually, then that might be useful. So haven't used their API yet, but like have my eye on it, I guess, because there's things that I would like to do with their API if I could use it, because at this point I guess we're not good enough with our Python bot to even really like warrant purchasing it. We're still playing around basically. So the API for Ahrefs is on another level, I guess, in a way, because they're aware of what they're providing, whereas I think Amazon or Google, they kind of just as a standard thing. Like Google's kind of, I don't know, the first time I ever encountered an API was through Google. I needed an API. Like you need API keys, obviously. That's my first experience with an API is through API keys. Just going like, you need this API key and you need this secret key and all this shit. So, I mean, I've been aware of APIs for years in that sense, but knowing why you need that stuff or what the potential of it is was kind of like not really apparent to me. But now that we've kind of come a little, like it's been a year since we started like toying around with APIs, but now we have me and my partner, we basically have a mission kind of in gear to really put APIs to use, because if your bot is sort of like friends with these different APIs and you can kind of envision these different missions that you want to achieve or accomplish, then the APIs suddenly become very, very useful, because first of all, you have access to them with your with some kind of a bot that can actually read the libraries and kind of make use of the libraries. But beyond that, you have to envision what you want the robot to do, because if you can't think of what the use of the API is, or what a robot could do with the API access, then you can't really like picture what I'm talking about. But essentially, I guess I'll just sort of conclude with what's happening currently with what we're doing. Essentially, we're just basically using the Google Business or Google Places, I think is the API we're using. So you want to do outreach, right? So you want to be able to contact large groups of people. And I'm not talking about spam. I'm talking about just to discourse with people about certain things, but you want maybe specific things. So say you want a bunch of surf shops or surf companies or whatever in the world or in the US or wherever. You can set parameters for Google business listings, and there's a cost for, I guess, querying their database, but it's relatively cheap and they give you some freebies to start with. But so yeah, you basically we're going to be compiling lists of contacts using the API, because the API, or not with the API and the bot, because the bot, its job is to scrape for website data and then like email data, and then we're going to basically like have a bunch of templates set up to like contacts. So this is basically an outreach tactic that I don't think, I mean, I've heard about, like, this is a not, a new invention, that like outreach is obviously like, many businesses do outreach constantly, but this is different, I guess, because it, the robot's actually basically our secretary, and that's pretty cool. And so without the robot and without the API access, we wouldn't be able to do any of this, and we would be stuck doing outreach the way that I normally have to do it, which is just the old-fashioned way. You're just like one at a time. You're manually accessing websites and trying to find email addresses, and basically, just doing things manually, which is good and probably the ideal way to do most outreach. Like, but you can accelerate, or you can expedite the process by having access to more contacts that you previously would not be aware of, because you now have a thing to basically go out and, without getting quote unquote caught, it just taps into the database, gets the stuff that's already publicly listed, and then brings it back and puts it in a place for you where you can see it like a spreadsheet. So you can be like, oh, okay, I've got all the surf shops in Florida now. Do I need that for anything? Okay, I guess, maybe I have a surf website, and I'm like, okay, well, I have access to all these addresses that I didn't have before, and then you can start emailing them. And of course, there's apps and websites to facilitate to expedite the sending of multiple emails, so you can not spam them, but just contact them. But now you have their information, which I guess before, if you are just manually doing things, then you're basically stuck with just, one at a time, doing things that way. But in this way, you can en masse, you can get a bunch of different addresses, I guess, and then you can essentially contact them also in a mass mail kind of thing. So that's basically where our bot is. That's where our bot is at. Our bot is preparing to do that, and the APIs, we're sort of getting the hang of how they work. So I guess the overall message of this rambling diatribe is that you should definitely not ignore APIs. You can use them for more than just building stupid apps or whatever. And I guess, there's a point to accessing them. So maybe if you have any way of doing that, you might want to explore that if you're in marketing, because I'm pretty sure that in the next couple years, it's going to be it's going to open things up a lot for me, because part of what I have to do in the next year or so is a lot of outreach and a lot of basically networking. And if I'm just doing that by myself manually, then some of those tasks are they take a long fucking time. So this speeds certain things up, and anyway, it's just worth thinking about anyway. So that about wraps it up, and I'll catch you later.